Okay, so my name is Wendy Askew. I was elected in 2020. I took office in January of 2021 as your District 4 County Supervisor. And it's been a wild 2 years, let me tell you. Between the pandemic, between fires, between floods, there's been a lot that has demanded our full attention. But in between all of that, we also have this responsibility of governing the county. So now that we're back in person, it's great to see everyone's faces. And I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Salinas Mayor Kimbley for this in-person town hall. So thank you for coming out to join us. I wanted to make a few introductions of Eric Mora, who's here with us from the District 4 County Supervisor Office. I'm a full-time employee of the county. So as your elected supervisor, I work full-time for you. And I have a staff of 3 people who help me be prepared for all of these meetings and
quit bragging.
do all unlike my friend, and all 12 of our mayors here in the county, all 12 city mayors, who are volunteers. They volunteer their time to be of service to you. So as we have our conversation tonight, I just want everyone to understand some of the differences between the county and the city, and some of the capacity that your city elected officials have versus the capacity that your county board of supervisors have. So we're here to serve you. We're going to listen to all of your feedback tonight. We're going to share a little bit about the city and a little bit about the county. But really, we work for you. So let us know what you need. Let us know what you're thinking about. Let us know what your issues and priorities are. And within the context of the different jurisdictional authorities that exist, we'll see what we can do to be responsive in whatever ways that looks like.
Kimbley Craig. I was on City Council from 2011 to 2018. I represented North Salinas, District 5, which encompassed Northridge Mall, Santa Rita, Hardin Ranch, and then the neighborhoods surrounding those general areas. So in 2020, as you know, our mayor unexpectedly passed away while in office, Mayor Joe Gunter. And it left a void in terms of who the mayor was going to be. And so I had stepped out of office in 2018 and decided to step back in 2020 during the pandemic with no vaccines, and we were the city with all the cases in the county, and we had no city manager and new council members, so it was really a time of transition and crisis. I always joke that I'm going to write a book called Mayoring Through Crisis. I appreciate the shout out on my side hustle as the mayor. That's very much what it is for me. I have to have a full-time job in order, most of us do, in order to live here. So, so being the mayor is a part-time position for me, but I try to give between 30 and 40 hours a week to it in some capacity. So I'm thrilled. One of the things Supervisor Askew, Wendy, I'll call you Wendy today because that's how I normally address you. Wendy really pointed out the differences between what the county does and what the city does, but one of the things that we really wanted to talk about as well is the collaboration between the city and the county. We haven't always gotten along. In fact, that's true. The county and the city as entities have sued the pants off of each other at times. But one of the things that was really important to me coming in as the mayor of Salinas was really to forge relationships with the county, with the supervisors of the county and with the administration of the county, because that's how you get more stuff done, is when you put your 2 heads together. So I'm thrilled to help co-host a town hall, and we'll try to answer questions and give a little bit of background between what the city's doing and what the county's doing and what we're doing together.
Before we go on, I have a couple slides. You have to put this really close, huh? I just want to say thank you to Carla Gonzalez, City Council person. Carla Gonzalez is here with us today and generously offered to provide Spanish translation, which we had failed to arrange. We're really good at it most of the time, but we fell through the cracks this time. So thank you, Carla. Thank you so much. We do try to make everything accessible to everyone as much as possible.
I do want to introduce Anthony Rocha. Councilmember Rocha's joined us as well.
Anthony, you're sneaky. You're tricksy, as Taylor Swift would say. Tricksy. Anthony Rocha, City Council member here in Salinas as well. I've got a little slideshow. I'm just going to roll through because I like slides. I think visuals are helpful. So just context that I always try to provide. This is the County of Monterey. It's very large. Between the County of Monterey is a subdivision of the state. So the state is divided into counties, and most of the responsibilities that the county has are responsibilities that the state tells us what to do, they tell us how to do it, and they give us the money to get it done. Sometimes they don't give us the money to get it done, but they tell us to do it anyway. So Monterey County is includes 12 incorporated cities, 16 unincorporated areas, and about 450,000 residents.
So incorporated, like being in a city that's incorporated means that there is a form of government that governs just that city. So Monterey, Carmel, Seaside, Salinas, Pacific Grove, Delray Oaks, Greenfield, King City, Soledad, unincorporated, Kashawa, Big Sur, Pebble Beach, Aromas, Schular, Bradley, so Pajaro, right? So the unincorporated areas of Monterey County are governed by the Board of Supervisors. The incorporated areas are governed by your local city councils.
Awesome, thank you. And to be very clear, the county doesn't have authority over the cities. It doesn't go authority-wise. The state has authority over the counties. The counties don't have authority over the cities. It's a separate form of organizational government. So.
It's like the highway patrol isn't in charge of the school districts.
Right.
That's another example.
And then District 4, which I always like to say, like, what is the area that I was, so these are the folks that live in this district, or the folks that voted for me. These are my voters in this district. So I have Delray Oaks, Seaside, Sam City, all of the most of the former Fort Ord, including one turn, I think it's turn 12 of Laguna Seca. I've got Marina, East Garrison, CSUMB, and then this is my portion here of South Salinas. So we're in South Salinas. This is the portion that I represent.
For Salinas residents, there are 5 county supervisors, and the city of Salinas is cut up so that 4 out of 5 county supervisors have a chunk of Salinas that they represent. So Chris Lopez represents the airport. Is this one? This is okay. Yeah, I was going to say airport area. Luis Alejo has the overwhelming majority of East Salinas and part of North Salinas. And Supervisor Glenn Church is all the way up in North Salinas, Bolsa Knolls, Santa Rita area. And as we mentioned, Wendy, the only supervisor that doesn't have Salinas is Mary Adams. She has primarily the peninsula, so Pebble Beach, Pacific Grove, Carmel, Big Sur, that kind of thing. And everywhere in the county is represented by a supervisor. Even incorporated cities have a county supervisor.
And the reason for that is because many of the responsibilities that the county has overlap or kind of are an umbrella over the cities. So if you think about anyone who goes to county jail, they could come from anywhere in the county. Anyone who uses a county park or votes in an election, the elections department is run by the county. Military and Veterans Affairs, Social Services, Natividad Medical Center, Probation, all of these are services that the county provides to everybody in the entire jurisdiction. The difference in, there are some differences when we talk about libraries. The city of Salinas has its own library system separate from the county. 3 libraries. 3 libraries, you have a whole system. A whole system of libraries.
System of libraries.
The city of Salinas has responsibility for its own roads, for its own parks, for things like that. But this is just sort of a big picture overview. I always like to explain, the county is this tremendously large organization. We're headed into a $1.9 billion budget this coming year with over 5,000 employees, a ton of very different broad responsibilities, most of which are funded directly by the state or federal government that requires us to provide that service.
These are all of the different departments of the city of Salinas. Obviously, we have our own fire department. We have our own police department. We're an incorporated city. That's part of the responsibility of being an incorporated city. Unincorporated, like Pebble Beach, like Schular, like Croondale, Castroville, all of those areas, those responsibilities fall within the county. So the county is responsible for public safety, for the roads, for all of the building permits, anything that you want to do outside of city limits. There's 46 parks in the city. We have 3 libraries, 6 fire departments, 1 new big police department on West Alisal. Engineering and transportation is at City Hall. We have a finance department, which is also at City Hall. Economic development, we have several staffers, but not a separate department for that. Community development, these are the people that are working on affordable housing projects, homelessness. Part of economic development comes in through community development, and our city attorney, who tells us not to say the wrong thing. And administration is our city manager. So that you know, in our city, we have a strong city manager form of government. So we hire what's essentially a general manager or a director of operations. That is the city manager. He is in charge of hiring and firing the finance director, the police chief, the fire chief, librarians. He is in charge. He's the general manager of the entire city. The city council hires and fires the city manager and the city attorney. Those are the only 2 employees that the city council and the mayor are in charge of. So if we don't feel like the city manager or the city attorney is doing a good job, that's our responsibility to give performance evaluations and then, you know, make sure that they're executing the policies of what our council has enacted. Yeah. So we do not primarily get funding from the state. The 2 main sources of revenue for the city are sales tax and property taxes. That's what pays for parks to be maintained. That's what pays for police officers and firefighters and public works and the maintaining of our libraries. The city's budget is about $240 million compared to the county's billion, right? 2 billion? 1.9, whatever, okay. We have about 600 employees, give or take. It kind of depends on hiring, but that's where we're at.
You guys need to make an effort to tell people or inform people that you spend it here, it stays here.
Yeah.
The taxes. Don't go to Monterey, don't go anywhere else, stay here, that way the tax dollars stay here. And I bet almost nobody knows that.
I actually, in one of my not so proud moments as an elected official, lectured one of the fire station guys who lives up in Santa Cruz and buys the week's worth of food at the Costco in Santa Cruz. And so I tried to explain to him, I'm like, listen, 2 main sources of revenue, sales tax. So when you go to In-N-Out or you make a major purchase in this city, that sales tax revenue goes to the county and it gets passed down to the city of Salinas. If you go to the Costco in Sand City, or the Target, or you like going over to the peninsula, you're paying for the services of the residents of Monterey and Sand City, and some of those other areas, right? You go out to dinner in Carmel, thank you very much, you've paid for the Carmel services. So it's really important to make sure that we are buying local and that we are staying local, and that's why we're always trying to go out for new and different restaurants, because you want to lure people over. Like Lowe's, when we got Lowe's, that was a huge win for the city of Salinas, because we have people coming from all over, because it's the only Lowe's in the general area. So, and I loved In-N-Out, but then they opened one in Seaside, so.
Well, yeah, we'll do a couple questions and then we'll go through a little more, but yeah, go ahead.
Where do the school districts fit into this big picture?
So that's a great question. Many other districts that exist. We have water districts. We have parks districts on the peninsula. We have fire districts. We have, oh my gosh, what are some of the other special districts that exist?
Garbage, transportation, well,
so there's a lot of different forms of it. So school districts are an entirely separate so the state of California has Department of Education. Each county in the state of California has a county office of education, completely separate from the county of Monterey government. So Denise Gus and the Board of Education at the county level are elected by the voters of the county to provide that state-required service locally for education. And then within that, there are 24 additional school districts in Monterey County, each of whom are governed by their own elected Board of Education. So cities do not maintain or manage schools. Neither does the County Board of Supervisors. We all operate independently in coordination and cooperation with one another. And I think that one of the things, and one of the reasons why I've appreciated working with Kimbley so much, is that as an elected leader, I have control of the things I have control over in my jurisdiction. But so often, the people who come to me have issues or concerns with something that touches a neighboring jurisdiction or another layer of government. Maybe it's their water bill, and I live in Marina, or I represent Marina. Marina has its own water district with an independently elected board. So to be able to get on the phone and say, hey, I'm going to pass, or hand off this constituent issue to you, or there's a policy issue that touches it, I can reach out to people and say, hey, here's the problem that we're having, or a challenge we're having. But school districts are their own additional sort of structure of government within counties and within cities. Yeah.
And in Salinas, we have 5 school districts.
5 separate school districts in the city of Salinas, 24 school districts within the county of Monterey. But I do want to just highlight some of the things that we've accomplished in the my first 2 years, your first, how many years? Is this year 3? Okay, so we both came in almost at the same time. And a lot of the things that are on my list of accomplishments are accomplishments that are shared with and or benefit Salinas. During COVID, the County of Monterey put $2 million to build infrastructure for internet connectivity that benefited some of our families in Salinas. The Esperanza Care health program provides access to health primary care doctor for 4,500 local workers in our community. About 1/3 of those people are from Salinas. The Salinas Valley Promise is the Hartnell College program. The county has contributed to that. Things like rental assistance. We put $50 million out through the county and nonprofit partners to support rental assistance during COVID. There's so many more things that come into play here, but I always like to highlight and remind folks there are a lot of good things happening, and sometimes it's hard to, I need to be reminded of them because I always want to see what's next, what's next, what's next. So I was going to go through a couple of the highlights, some of the shared projects that we've worked on together, and then we'll just open it up for questions. So these are my key projects and things I'm most excited about, and then I'll let Kimbley add on. But the Salinas Downtown Vibrancy Plan is not a county project. It's not a county vision, but the county operates, and our headquarters, our government center, is in downtown Salinas. So we're an active partner in this Downtown Vibrancy Plan. And one of the things that we always say we want is to build more housing inside of cities. We don't want to have sprawling development out into farmlands. We want to try to build as much housing as we can inside of the city because the city has recreation programs and a lot more services than what the county can offer. But in downtown Salinas, there's a lot of little city blocks that are being used as parking lots. The county uses those parking lots, and we need parking for our employees that come to work. But what that means is that the city can't develop those parking lots into housing unless we find somewhere else for the cars to go. So I've taken it upon myself to kind of bring my county along and say, listen, we need to be a partner in building a parking structure so that we can move all those cars out of those individual city blocks and let the city build multi-level, higher density housing in this place where we have a lot of resources. And it's been a challenge to move that forward because parking structures by themselves are very expensive. But the vision that we're trying to hold on to isn't that we just want to build parking that's expensive. We want to create space for other development, that's the kind of development that we want to happen.
So with that, about the parking, are you looking at public partners as well then?
Yes.
Or private, I should say?
Private, yeah. So, so through the chair. So to answer that question, as we're surrounded by empty parking lots, right? There's an empty parking lot, there's an empty parking lot, there's an empty parking lot across the street, there's an empty parking lot behind the police station, quite a bit of real estate, essentially. Not necessarily to be developed entirely, but to look at it strategically and figure out, okay, the city started the Downtown Vibrancy Plan in 2012, so it was a 10-year project. The council at the time, in 2012, also simultaneously was working on an East Salinas Vibrancy Plan, and we called it the Alisal Vibrancy Plan. Unfortunately, as we were moving both plans along, the developer for the Alisal Vibrancy Plan unexpectedly passed away. And so it put that project on hold while we tried to regroup and figure out what we were going to do with that. We can't take someone else's plans and develop them despite, you know, the circumstances. But we had the funding. Okay, that's a whole that's a whole separate town hall. So the Downtown Vibrancy Plan had funding sources from Measure X, had funding sources from Measure G, I believe, and a couple of other formulas to basically put several $1 million into downtown, with the intent that if you build downtown, then more newer, fun businesses would come downtown, which, as you guys can see, is starting to take place. Parking continues to be an issue, and the city recognizes that. We put 59, I believe it was 59 units above the old Rabobank building. Long term, there's a parking structure planned from behind that. It's a flat parking lot right now. And so one of the big things that the county and the city were working on, because we're next door neighbors, literally right here, we have a lot of staff parking needs, and it was becoming a hazard to have hundreds, literally hundreds of city and county employees crossing Alisal Street. And we've had accidents, we've had pedestrian accidents over it. And so the city's commitment to try to figure out how to do that safely, how to have thousands of employees, not just with the city and the county, but now a new shifting downtown, how to have parking safely so people can get from point A to point B without crossing 4 lanes of traffic, or 2 lanes and a couple of bike lanes. So, so we're really proud of the Downtown Vibrancy Plan, but I will acknowledge, and I think this is probably going to be your next discussion, the Alisal Vibrancy Plan. We've nearly completed this, and so the Alisal Vibrancy Plan is next up for us.
When I came into office, the MOU that helped the county and the city, or the staff, work together on these things, the MOU had been expired.
Memorandum of Understanding.
The Memorandum of Understanding. It's the document where the city and the county both say, this is how we're going to work together, and they both sign it. The VITA Community Health Worker Program was something that it was more of the county took the lead on in the middle of COVID, but it was in service to our residents who were most negatively impacted by COVID. So we hired $7 million, we hired 100 community health workers, and we identified down to the census tract where the residents, or where the people in the community had the highest rates of COVID were. And we had these community health workers go into those neighborhoods and knock on doors to provide resources to folks. When vaccines became available, they helped people sign up to get their vaccines. When testing became available, they ran testing clinics for folks. These are still an active program in the community, and the state is now looking at having Medi-Cal continue to pay for community health care workers. So Salinas was where we had many of these community health care workers deployed out into the community.
And they were quick to respond to. We had an outbreak of COVID initially at City Hall, and Wendy called me at like 11 o'clock at night and said, I can get a tent out in front of City Hall at 8 a.m. And I was like, I will take it. I'm not even going to ask. So, and they were out there all day testing everybody just to make sure, you know, those that were in the facility were okay. So, again, another testament to like late night phone calls and trying to figure out behind the scenes how best to move forward collaboratively.
I also want to, speaking to this number of different government agencies, there are also a number of organizations in the community that allow for regional discussions and regional planning. So the Transportation Agency for Monterey County is one of those bodies. I'm not sure if Kimbley is actually a or what its official structure is, but we have things like the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, the Air District for a tri-county region. We have Solid Waste Authority, we have Community Power, and these are places where elected officials from different cities, different county supervisors, school board members all have a seat at a table where they get to make joint decisions. So through all of those partnerships, the Safe Routes to School program is one of the ones where we're trying to identify where are our streets not safe for our children to cross them, for our parents to, go to the store. How do we ensure that every street is designed in such a way that it's going to not allow for traffic accidents or fatalities for pedestrians? So this is another thing that the city and the county health department work together on. And this is one that's hard to talk about because it feels like we're not doing enough, and there's always more to get done. But it's at the forefront of most conversations that we have. So homelessness, and what are we doing about it, and who's responsible for it, it's a challenge because the way that the state has put mandates on the county and put responsibilities on the city, it's not technically nobody's being held accountable for ensuring that homeless residents have the services that they need. And so in Monterey County, we have a coalition of homeless service providers. It's another one of these agencies that gets funding and does work in the community. With different electeds. And there's a story I want to tell. We'll go to the numbers in a minute, but I think it was month 2 when I had taken office, and I was the chair of our board, and the county and the city had been working to build the shared homeless shelter in Salinas as a joint project. So meaning the county was putting money in, the city was putting money in, and it came time the building was built, and it came time to hire the nonprofit that was going to run the shelter. And it became clear to me that the county board of supervisors was prepared to vote for one group, and that the city council was going to vote for a different group to run the shelter. And if that had happened, we probably would have ended up suing each other, and the shelter wouldn't have opened, and we would have spent a lot of money on attorneys. So as I'm sort of feeling like I think this is going to happen, I called the mayor and I said, this is what I think I see happening. Do you see something different happening? She said, no, I see that same thing happening. And I said, well, what should we do? So the county board of supervisors was scheduled to meet on Tuesday in the morning, and the city council was scheduled to meet on Tuesday in the evening. And I said, Kimbley, I think we need to have a joint meeting. I think we need to get the city council and the board of supervisors together in the same room, and we need to have all the information, the same information shared, and we need a vote all at the same time so that it can't be a different outcome. And so she said, oh yeah, so let's do that. So she called her city manager, and I called my county, our general manager, called a CAO, and I called and I said, hey, this is what I'm worried, I think we need a joint meeting. And he said, oh, Wendy, we don't do joint meetings at the county with the city. We've never done that, we don't do that. I called Kimbley back and he said no.
And mine said no, and we both thought it was a great idea, and we both promptly got shut down. And so we patched them into our phone call and said, actually, this is what we're doing. And it comes down to like when you've worked in government for 25 years and 30, stuff like we've never done it before, right? Like Well, if it's a big hot mess, we'll never do it again, right? But we might as well try.
It was going to be a big hot mess.
It was going to be a big hot mess anyway, right? So with a lot of coordination, and it was during COVID, so we had the option to do Zoom, which was very helpful, which I know all of you are looking at it going, why, that makes no sense. Like, why wouldn't you just do a Zoom? But the reality is you have two separate bodies who had to vote on two separate contracts and do it simultaneously, but then also to make sure that it's recorded with the county clerk and that we have a city clerk recording our vote, and you know, the two shall never cross. So Wendy and I sat in the chambers and ran the meeting together, and yep, everybody else was online. And we successfully chose one operator that night. And I do believe, I really do believe that would not have happened had we not kind of bucked the system, so to speak. It was a really productive meeting. It was contentious at times, but everybody got the same information. Everybody heard the same public comment. And then we made our decisions together, but separately as two separate governing boards. And so, and I credit Wendy for that. I mean, you know, there are a lot of people who want to put you in a box as a politician, like, oh, she's, you know, super liberal or super conservative, or she's somewhere down the middle. But the reality is, like, if you're not working together and you're not reaching across the aisle, stuff doesn't get done. So I'm really grateful for that relationship.
Was very kind, but I think that the reason that I'm here, the reason that you're here, is because there's bigger issues than my ego, bigger issues than your career. Like, we're here because there are critical needs in our county, and the only way we're going to tackle big, hairy challenges, like making sure that everyone in our county has shelter, when we're looking at a reality in 2017, that 2,400 of our residents are homeless. And in 2019, in the county, 2,052 residents are homeless. And in 2022, 1,741 residents are homeless. Like, there's no time or place to fight amongst jurisdictions. Like, we've got to move beyond ourselves to get to outcomes for people. And these numbers, I think, are what motivate us to do the work that needs to be done. But I think it's also important to recognize that because of partnerships, because we're in Monterey County, we're doing something that's not happening anywhere else in the state. Very, very few counties can say that their homeless count from 2017 to 2019 went down. Very few counties in this state can say that their homeless count from 2019 to 2022 went down. And Monterey County has done it twice. Most other places in this state, their numbers have continued to trend significantly, triple digits, double digits, upward. And I know it doesn't feel like it's enough, and it's not, but we're doing something right here in Monterey County, and we are getting people into shelter, and we're getting people into stability so that they can live a dignified life with safe shelter and somewhere safe and healthy to sleep. So, anyway, among the many things that we work on, this is one I'm really proud of, and I don't want to underestimate how significant it is that the county can't do this alone, the city can't do this alone. We've got to keep working together, and we need the public to help us, hold us accountable to keep working together towards these goals. So I could talk and talk and talk, but I want to, I think, open it up for the public for any other comments. So,
is there any volunteer work that we could do for the county or for the city?
For the
help
city?
out? Yeah, is there any website
I love that you've asked that question. In 2021, the city launched Amor Salinas. Okay. And similarly to your question, we had church groups, we had Rotaries, we had, you know, Girl Scout troops. There was a Boy Scout troop that wanted to do an Eagle project for the city of Salinas, and there was no real concerted effort to take pride in the city and to really work towards cleaning up the city. After being in the pandemic for 2 years with Governor Newsom's mandate not to clean up, essentially. And I'm not just talking, you know, one of the things that I discovered relatively early on was that when you talked about the city being dirty, it almost inexplicably was linked to homelessness. The homeless were making the city dirty, but the reality is, you know, if you don't clean your bathroom for 2 years, like, it's going to get dirty. And I wasn't talking about the homelessness, I'm talking about the garbage on Sanborn and the center divide on North Main that's got garbage in it. The city was just dirty. And the parks had fallen into disrepair, and we really coming out of the pandemic needed a boost of energy. Oh, look at you. See, if you volunteer, we have all kinds of swag for our volunteers. So if you come out for a day, you get an Amore Salinas t-shirt, and those are a hot commodity, I'm told. So the intent is to have groups come out during Amore Salinas days, and we have you work on a park, like El Dorado Park, or Cesar Chavez Park, or the skate park, or different areas of the city in which you choose. We had one church that wanted to do like 1 square mile around their church, right? So I was like, game on, we'll give you a couple orange vests and a bunch of bags and t-shirts, and that's an opportunity that you can use for community service hours for high schoolers or anything. We really love community engagement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would say for the county, I think we don't really have the same kinds of community that the city would have, but we do have, and the city does have a number of county commissions. So, oh my gosh, there's dozens of them. The Community Action Commission, the, help me out, Eric, there's a lot of them. The Behavioral Health Commission, the Commission on the Status of Women. There's literally probably 40 different county boards and commissions. So at the front, there was a little how to get involved, and you can hop online and see the list of commissions. And we'd love to have you advise, and these are commissions that advise the Board of Supervisors on different local issues. Are there other questions? Yeah, thank you.
So on the homeless, you were saying that you're doing things here that are working, that are not being done elsewhere. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh my gosh, yes, I can elaborate on that. So yes, the question was, we talked about what we're doing in Monterey County to reduce the number of unsheltered individuals in our community. What are we doing differently that's working here? And so I think what we're doing differently here, and I think there's going to be more conversation about this at the state level as they're paying more attention. But one of the things that we're doing differently in Monterey County is we're really working together. Our Lead Me Home, our coalition, we have a plan. It's called the 5-year plan to end homelessness, or it was a 10-year plan to end homelessness. But the number of partners who came together, the number of different of these, the school districts at the table, where the city councils at the table, we had nonprofits at the table. All of the community came together to say, how do we collectively, we know what we need to do. We need more affordable housing. And we need the case management that's going to help someone go from being unhoused to being in shelter that they can afford. We need the homeless prevention services in place so that when someone has a 3-day notice, they have the help that they need to pay their rent and not become unhoused. So the 10-year plan helped us move that progress forward. We did a 5-year update, and last year had our first ever summit on homelessness. It was on Zoom. You can watch the video. We had about 650 Monterey County leaders, leaders like yourself, leaders, people who care. And we provided some information about what we are doing here. We also kept bringing in ideas from other communities so that we can keep learning and keep growing and keep doing better. I think the one thing that we do need, the only thing that's going to get us out of homelessness is more housing that is affordable for our workers and our families and our elders. And the city is making progress on that, the county is making progress on that, but as you can see from those numbers earlier, we have a tremendous challenge ahead of us. It's going to get harder the farther we dig in, and when you recognize the humanitarian crisis that is in Pajaro right now, the number of families and people who will not be able to return to their housing because their housing was substandard to begin with, because it was overcrowded to begin with, because they didn't have housing to begin with, the need for that additional housing will never, we're going to feel it tremendously in the coming years. So partly also what we need to keep doing is asking the federal and state governments for more resources to fund the affordable housing and to make it easier to build the affordable housing that folks need.
If I can thing on that.
Yeah.
So is there anything being provided like for jobs or maybe like substance abuse kind of?
Yes.
So I'll tag on to your comment. So the city took an approach when you're looking at homelessness, and I have to apologize to my council members because they hear me say this tagline over and over again, but the city took a housing first approach, and the county is also on that same page, where if you put a roof over someone's head, they're far more likely to accept the other services they need in order to transition out of homelessness. So whether that be drug rehabilitation, mental health services, workforce investment, somebody who's just quite literally lost their apartment and needs to be transitioned for a period of time until they can get into long-term safe housing. There are many different reasons why people are homeless. And it's interesting, I will tell this story about, it was 6 or 7 years ago, where I went to Salt Lake City, and Salt Lake City had just made national news for reducing homelessness by 94%, some crazy, in the 90th percentile. And they had built a bunch of tiny homes. And, you know, the interesting component of that was when I went out to Salt Lake City, they still had a lot of homeless out on the street, and the city was not clean. And I remember asking a barista, you know, I said, I thought you guys had managed to transition homelessness, you know, and reduce it in your community, and by building all of these tiny homes. And the barista, this 19-year-old barista, says to me, well, they come out of their homes. And I was like, so as an elected in California, one, you know, you're in Salt Lake City, Utah, right? So much different attitude towards homelessness, but the policy making of, I'm going to build a 10 by 10 box and put somebody in it, without those added services, without the ability to work with them to try to get them to transition out, really provides a roof over someone's head, but that's all it does, right? Part of this is making sure that you're giving that case management. I mean, that case management is what's so critical. And I tell that story, it's super unpolitically correct, you know, but it shows you the different attitudes of how different elected people throughout the country are handling homelessness. And they were patting themselves on the back, but the reality was they were just sort of creating a roof over somebody's head, but not providing those backup services, which is what's so critical. Yes?
So I have a housing question. I'm a renter here in Salinas, downtown. My triplex is recently sold. I have a new landlord. I had a conversation today with the realtor / property manager, and he says the reason why landlords can take advantage of renters, in my opinion, can do the residue because there's supply and demand based on that supply. And with that, and it's the market economy. So the landlord can charge whatever they want because that's the market, the marketplace. And I said, well, what's the reason for this? What do you think the reason is? He said, and I quote, it's the politicians.
That's cool, okay.
It's
the politicians, okay.
It's the politicians. And I said, okay, well, we should do something. Okay, well, I do, I know. You need to do more than this. Well, I can't be political, so I lose business, whatever. So I had mentioned Wendy was something, and then he said, well, yes, he goes, just like people like Wendy, I'm sure she owns a home, I'm sure she owns rentals, so I'm sure she doesn't want to see more housing, because then her income will go down. And I said, well, you don't know it.
Exactly, yeah, I was gonna say, like.
So I mean, I guess my question is, and what I'm gonna work on finding out is, why do we have this problem?
So many answers to that question. So I'm just going to start by saying that, like, I do own a home, and I have a roommate. My family, we have a local teacher who rents a room from us because it helps us pay our rent or pay our mortgage, and it helps him have somewhere to. So yes, we do provide housing for someone else, but in a very different context than I think what was being suggested. So yes, housing on some level is supply and demand, but I'm going to argue that it's a nuanced supply and demand. In Monterey County, we have 11,000, I'm going to repeat that number, 11,000 vacant homes, second homes, homes that are not occupied as residences. 11,000 vacant homes. So where I live in Marina, there's been thousands of new homes built. 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, beautiful homes. Many of those homes remain purchased but vacant so that someone can retire in that home later. So the homes that we need, yes, we need more housing, but also we need housing to serve the workforce that lives here. The homes that we're building are not homes, not the types of homes, there's a missing middle is what it's called. We're building, what we call capital affordable A housing, which is subsidized affordable. And then we build super high-end market rate, McMansions. And we're missing everything in the middle. And I get frustrated. So for instance, in East Garrison, which is in District 4, there's a developer who developed a whole plan for East Garrison. And then the developer went bankrupt, and the plan was sold to another developer, and then that developer sold the plan to another developer. So you talk about the developer, not wanting to develop someone else's plan. They're now coming back to us, and that plan, the phase 3 portion of it, or the next phase, had included a bunch of condo units, small, multi-level condo units that would be that missing middle. Well, they're coming back and saying, oh, we can't sell condo units for the profit that we want. We can make more money on single-family homes. We want to change the plan to only allow for single-family homes. So the tension, well, in that case, it's the developer asking the politicians to change the rules, to change the plan. I think there's also, and what we're seeing at the state, because we don't have enough of that missing middle, you're seeing statewide legislation like SB 9 and a number of other housing-specific pieces of legislation coming in that take away the control of a local city or a local county to decide where we build housing, what kind of housing, to give more control to developers who want to build housing. So there's a tension, of course, from the developers. They want to build housing that they can make a profit on, and they deserve to make a profit off of their work. There's also reasons why local jurisdictions put up barriers to high-density developments coming into their community. So I think when you stack all of those levels of barriers together, politicians, I work for you. So if the community is showing up to a local Board of Supervisors saying, we don't want that 3-level condo complex in our neighborhood, we're going to vote you all out if you approve it, that's one reason why that may happen. Another maybe because the developer wants something different. Yeah, and there was another comment here on this point.
Yeah, can I piggyback on the question? I know that here in the city of Salinas, I think it's the downtown area, specific blocks are allocated permission to convert a commercial building into housing, but I know it's just concentrated in downtown. Wouldn't it be beneficial to expand that a little bit to relieve some of the housing issues that we do have?
So we're doing that, and so just so you know, like there's for instance, a church in North Salinas that wanted, the churches back in the 1940s and 50s were a gathering place for community and big parking lots, and a lot of that is, some of that has changed over the years. The city has created different zoning for its own properties, including parking lots for things like housing. And that, so the city doesn't just own this area. I mean, we're talking about Sherwood Hall, you talk about the sports complex, we've got property in different areas of our 22 square miles within the city limits. So the answer is yes, and there's a real push, and I'll give mad credit to this council on the focus of affordable housing. And Wendy is right. When you look at our regional housing needs analysis, it shows that we're doing really well in above market and above, right? Because who isn't in California? And then we're doing actually relatively well with low income. But when it comes to workforce housing, right? Workforce housing, we're at 1%. And so to give you some, back to your comment, is it the politicians? Thank you for that, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, what I would tell you is nationwide, on a national level, there are a lot of decisions that are made depending on if you're in Texas, depending on, but here in California, here in Monterey County, here in Salinas, I would tell you overwhelmingly, there is a huge effort, whether you own a home or not, there's a huge effort to build and to expand the housing market. You need different levels of inventory. I bought my condo on North Main when I was 30 years old, and I had a mortgage guy, frankly it was during the the 0% down, big giant bubble. I apparently am a firm believer in buying high and selling low, but at the time, I was a single woman trying to buy a house and got told by a mortgage person, you don't make enough money, you have to be married. And that was just not okay, right? So it's not just about building the single family homes, it's about building apartments, it's about building condos, it's about building senior housing. With a washer and dryer, the granny units, that's been a huge effort with the city to try to expand the different availability of housing. And I will also just acknowledge our council has approved any new development has to have 20% of affordable, inclusionary housing in any new development that comes forward. So there is that movement. This council, this current council, and I think you were speaking to it a little bit, we had an exemption on affordable housing in downtown. So that's how some of the, the Dick Bruin apartments got built so quickly. And if there's no requirement to build affordable housing, right, then there's a greater profit margin involved there. So this council lifted that exemption and said, nope, that exemption now is part of downtown as well. So, a lot of really robust conversations, but to, I think answer multiple questions on housing, there's a real concerted effort. I can speak to the city of Salinas, Wendy can certainly speak to her district in the county. There's a real focus on making sure that there's a lot of different inventory. There's new apartments that went up on Abbott, that's all workforce housing. Salinas, thank you, Salinas Union High School District.
We have to make enough money, live where we want to live,
right.
not live where somebody's putting, that's
so we're working on different inventory options for housing.
My landlord has all the power, I have none.
So I think among so much to talk about with housing. So there's things you were talking about employer-sponsored housing, that's one scenario that gets us more housing quickly. I think everything has to be on the table. All of the options have to be on the table. And I'll point to the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership has a housing white paper that goes into a lot more detail on some of the additional policy actions that can be taken locally. The county is working on our housing element and our updated RHNA numbers, regional housing needs assessment numbers. I'm happy to talk about housing anytime anyone wants to talk about housing. But yes, and things like rent caps, those are all things that have to be on the table. How we look at rent control, how we look to protect those who are renters. The house that we bought, my husband and I bought 20 years ago, we couldn't afford to rent the house next door to us. So because of the way Prop 13 works and the way that your mortgage goes down over time, it's fundamentally not fair. I could afford to take a job at a pay rate that my neighbor couldn't afford to, just to pay their basics. So we'll talk more about housing if we want to stick around, but I want to make sure we cover a few more questions.
We work for Waste Management. We're on strike right now. Our hearts go out to Pajaro. We're really concerned about it. On last Tuesday, we dropped off some food with our local union, 270, and then over the weekend, we also went over to some volunteer work. We did that for about 5 hours. Personally, myself, I grew up in Carmel. I was adopted. In '95, my mom's house flooded 5 feet, so I understand what they're going through. My heart goes out to them. I really want to be there for them. You talk about housing. We're farly underpaid. We're in that 1% percentile. I agree with you. We should be able to, if we work hard, we should be able to go back to our families, provide them, have a nice housing for them. And when it comes to cleaning our community up, we need to have time to do that as well. If we're underpaid, we're having to work 10, 12 hours a day. When do we have time to spend time with our family? I hope you really look into waste management as a whole who serves the Monterey County and how they're not giving us that time. It's pretty much, we got to be out there. And when a driver who drives a large truck that weighs over 40 tons sometimes and down the community working 12 hours, that's not good for the community. We're out there tired and anything could happen. It only takes 1 second for that to happen. So I hope that you, Wendy, really look into waste management and hopefully you do an audit on them.
Thank you, and I am aware, so the County of Monterey contracts with a company called Waste Management to provide with garbage, I think there's a word for it.
Sanitation, garbage, look at it like
yes. So all the trash pickup at individual property homes. The city of Salinas has its own contract with another provider. Our workers for waste management are unionized. So they have the collective bargaining power to negotiate with their employer on issues of wages, on working conditions. And right now, the workers are on strike because the working conditions are not being met. They're not being provided with fair working conditions. So I stand with our workers. I've sent my letter of support and encourage waste management to make right, to show you the respect and fairness that you deserve. But the bigger, broader issue that we're up against is that the salaries of our workers in Monterey County are not sufficient to allow people to live a good life with take care of their family. So the median home price in Monterey County is $740,000, and yet we have a median household income of $66,000 in Monterey County. So $66,000 median income will never qualify you to buy a $740,000 home. Our poverty level in Monterey County is higher than the statewide average. But the wealth in our community is significant. The disparities in Monterey County are some of the greatest that you'll see anywhere. When you look at a $14 million home on Scenic Avenue, which is less than 20 miles from Seaside and Marina, where we have 2,000 McKinney-Vento homeless students. So, as a local elected official, this all weighs very heavily on me. As a local elected official looking at what's happening in Parco, it's hard not to feel helpless, but also everyone's looking to me to say, what are we going to do? How do we make this right? And so much of the challenge that we face locally, I think it is related to structural discrimination. It's related to really big national challenges and sort of how we are okay or not okay nationally, culturally, with distributions of wealth that are so vastly disproportionate. Those are not things we're going to be able to fix on a local level, but we can talk about them, we can raise awareness of them, we can acknowledge that there are realities that are so unfair, and do what we can locally to support the additional housing, to support fair wages, to support our workers. sometimes it's hard not to feel helpless in all of it. But I do, when I go back to our list of local wins, right? Like there are things that we're doing locally that are making people's lives better. We are statistically and meaningfully helping people who were unhoused move into shelter. We are adding housing inventory for our workforce housing. It's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. But it's what we can actually get done and accomplish. We're working with the city and the county collectively to build even more housing. We've got projects that are moving forward as we speak. If you ask me, I don't believe that local government is going to be able to meet the needs of Pajaro. We need federal resources. We need the federal disaster declaration. Why we haven't received it yet is beyond me. They keep telling us maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow.
It was just signed.
Was it just signed? Oh my God. I'm glad. We'll cheer for that one. Thank you, but we can't, local, even if you took the county's $2 billion budget and said we're going to close the jail, we're not going to offer any of the other services that we provide, that we're required to provide, we still don't have enough to provide what's needed to rebuild that community or to fix the disparities that exist that we talk about. So thank you for raising the issue of unions. I think labor movement is a great way to help continue to raise. I mean, you guys talk about these issues. You raise the issues. You stand up together to fight for these issues. But collectively, we've got a lot more to move forward. So little pedestal there that I ventured off on. But thank you for coming out tonight. And thank you for taking me on a drive along.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question regarding to trash, and Mayor said about trash and in all areas. And actually, every resident in the state of California, Monterey County also is required to recycle. And actually, I don't know if here in the city, but some residents have been charged because of contamination or contaminating the recyclables. And my question for you is, because as of right now, waste management is mixing the trash and the recyclables and the garbage in the same truck. So did the county allow them to do that, or yes, they are doing it on their own?
Yeah, so the county executes a contract. So we put out a formal request for proposals for all the garbage companies, and then we have a contract. And the contract that the county signs, the city signs with their waste provider, it lists out all of the different conditions and requirements for that agency to fulfill. If that agency doesn't fulfill them, so in this case the county's contracted with Waste Management as a company, if that company is required in the contract to, and I haven't seen the contract, I'm not looking at the contract, required to separate trash from recyclables, there's something in that contract usually that states, if you don't do this, then these are the consequences. So I would assume that there's something in the contract, and that whoever in the county has contract managers. The contract managers have oversight over that contract. So we are aware of the situation you're describing, but we'll defer to the contract that exists between the company and the county.
One quick question. I think one big issue that we have as well is that Waste Management is looking to extend their contract after 2025 of June. Are you going to take this incident into consideration and how they service the community? And read through the contract?
So I can't speak to that specifically because the proposal hasn't come to the board yet, and I don't have the information. But I think that in general, we would want for all of the county employers, the county as an employer takes seriously how we treat our employees. We work hard to pay fair wages, and we work hard to provide benefits that are good benefits to our workers, and we expect everyone who works with the county to do the same for their workers. So that would be a general value that I believe my colleagues hold on the board, and that I hear day in and day out when I talk to Anthony Rocha in the city of Salinas, when I talk to Carla in the city of Salinas, and when I talk to the mayor. So I can't speak for my colleagues, but I can tell you the values that we hold.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll go to the back and then come back up front. Yeah.
that I'm involved with that both of you are intersect with is the Hitchcock Road Animal Shelter. You both contract with, and I invite you to come out and see our animals. And we're really looking for fosters these days. We have many dogs that have been there. They a large number of dogs, big dogs, that have been there anywhere from. We even have dogs going back as long as November that are looking for homes. And we have Frenchies, we have Yorkies, we have everything for everyone. So that you both contract for the services, and I know that you're working toward the JPA that's going to be happening shortly. But the other thing I'm really involved with that involves both your respective jurisdictions is the homeless. That I've been a volunteer working with a number of different agencies. That I'm the lady that's out on Thursdays on Market Street handing out dog food. And I've also been out for over the 2 years going to the Constitution encampment and industrial area. And then when people were put in motel rooms, I followed them there through CSUMB, and then I followed them over to Country and Marina, and then there I've been trying to attend the homeless commission meetings for the county, and the last couple of meetings have been canceled, and I'm concerned because people are being moved back this week, and I have spent a lot of time with the Sheriff's Center and the Step Up. I think that they have a lot of positive things. The thing I'm really concerned about is it sounds really good on the surface to say housing first. And I hear all of this talk, but in terms of animals, it is not working. That they've allowed as many as 3 dogs per motel room. When you look at a density of Step Up in Work Street, they've got 100 rooms. They're now going to be moving people in there, and they're saying, no, we will not allow 3 dogs. But people have had to sign paperwork that said that you had to have your dog spayed or neutered, and they're now saying no. And one of the staff is actively against this and says, I think that the homeless should be able to have intact animals and breed their own animals. And this is causing a real problem down the pike. If your animal is injured and you can't pay the bills, there are local services that will help you with the bills for low-income people, but you've got to consent to get your animal spayed or neutered.
So I think, so there are a lot of questions there. So what I would submit is that we're going to get your name and information, and I'd like a little more information, maybe not quite in the public setting, about which employee over at Step Up, and I'd like more details.
I know I put a lot out there, but I'm just concerned because of the time sensitivity of this.
Sure.
And it's like, hey, we'll give you the dog kibble, and we'll do these different things, and it's like, I can't reach some of the people that in charge, like Jackie at CSUMB that's in charge of the Chase Center and everything. I'm a retired LCSW. I've worked with the homeless, so I kind of know a good judge of what I'm seeing. Some of what the services that you're saying, that you're paying for expanded services, that they're not getting in Marina. They're not getting in different places. And so that's the thing that concerns me. I think that it's a good thing in theory, but I know that the county budget hearings are coming up. I don't know the timetable for the city budget hearings, but I think there needs to be, it's one thing when you see on politicians' Facebook pages that I went here, and this is great, and I know it's great. We are getting people off the streets, but one thing is, for a lot of the people that are on the streets that are very hard on the FARS assessments, scoring to get in, that these people, there is no warming center, and it's been so cold since the beginning.
Sure.
So
and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. One of the things that we've also discovered is you need several different levels of services, right? Like Dorothy's Kitchen absolutely serves a purpose. Victory Mission serves a purpose. So you're absolutely right. I am going to have Christina and I think Eric Moore are both chomping at the bit to get your info. We'll talk a little further about that. I do want to be conscientious of everyone's time. I think We got one more question, and but I promised Carrie, because I'm all about running an efficient meeting, so we told her next.
So maybe not a question, but a challenge. So,
Sure.
as you know, I'm also very involved in education. I work with KPK through college. And statistics in Denver, the Salinas High School District, this year, 50% of every incoming 7th grader were 4 or more years behind in reading. So if we don't think that if our housing or homeless is going down, it's going to go up because our kids are not reading. And I know it's not a county problem or a city problem. But in my opinion, we have so many school districts, and actually 11 in Salinas, and we have the whole county. I challenge the county to get together with all the cities and try to figure out together how to fix our education problem. We can't do this all separately. We have to do it together to fix it. And we have to put time and money into K-3 and get our kids reading. They are not reading. I teach college, I teach history. We have to listen to the book in class because they cannot read. They cannot write. I just read scholarship applications. Horribly written. Horribly written. So we have a problem in education. So I just challenge the county and all the cities to get together to solve this.
I would just share with you, Councilwoman Gonzalez and actually Councilmember Brocha, we created an education subcommittee with the city. And part of that was all of the complexities, right? Because we talked about, well, you know, California Highway Patrol is in charge of the highways, right? And so similarly with the school districts, there was a lot of separation, but we do need to work together. There are a lot of big projects that we're working on that include the school districts, including the future growth area, right? We're slated for 11,000 housing units up in North Salinas, and that absolutely includes more schools, right?
Buyers from the Bay Area, they're going to take the kids up there.
So that's a whole separate topic, but we have 3 separate phases of housing and many different levels and quite a bit of discussion about ensuring that we are allowing our Salinas residents to be moving into that housing. I will just acknowledge there are multiple topics that the Education Subcommittee, I'll give the opportunity, Councilmember Rocha or Councilmember Gonzalez, you want to talk about a couple of things that the Education Subcommittee is addressing?
Can Rocha talk about it so I can translate?
Yes.
All right.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Okay. You are a rock star, by the way. You get the gold star.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Anthony Rocha. I'm on the Salinas City Council representing District 6. So the Education Outreach Subcommittee is doing our very best to meet with every superintendent in the city to talk about ways in which we can collaborate on the education component, but also on facilities, and making sure that we're able to keep facilities open longer so that students can get after school programs, they could have opportunities to collaborate with the city in that capacity. We're also looking at things like crossing guard programs. You know, one of the things that has been really difficult for us as a city in Salinas is we've experienced, along with our residents, multiple economic downturns, and there's been a continuous cut in public services. And so we're trying to be nimble on how we could bring back things like crossing guard programs, after-school programs. The city recently did a prevention intervention pilot program. We allocated $300,000 to do that. So that's what we're looking at the Education Outreach Subcommittee, is how we can partner with local educational institutions to educational institutions, and we'll look at all the communities.
Thank you. Closer. Thank you.
And then it is 7 o'clock, so I just want to acknowledge that. I didn't want to miss your question over here.
Bueno, mi nombre es Lidia Soto y estoy aquí con el grupo de la escuelita de 6 participantes de diferentes distritos de la ciudad. Agradezco a todos por compartir. Yo pienso que todo es importante acá.
I'm so thankful for you all that have shared. I think that we've discussed a lot of important issues.
El tema de la ciudad, de las viviendas en la ciudad de Salinas es el que nos está trayendo hacia acá, ahorita nosotros.
The reason that we're here is the housing issue in the city of Salinas. That's why we're here to really show our support for housing in the city of Salinas. That's why we showed up today.
Es un tema realmente importantísimo que está dañando a muchas familias completas.
It's an important topic that is affecting families across the spectrum. We need to call attention to it.
Muchas familias están pasando por desalojos, por el juego de la marqueta de elevar los precios, los altos costos de renta.
Lots of families are being displaced because of fluctuations in the market economy and rent increases and lack of oversight.
Inversionistas de otras ciudades están viniendo a invertir, a comprar nuevas propiedades aquí para aumentar el costo de renta. Las familias las desalojan, empiezan con nuevos inquilinos a un alto precio de costo de renta.
Companies and investors that come into our local community so that they can bring in new renters who then raise the prices and end up displacing the local community that have no protections and nowhere to go.
Los ingresos aquí en el condado de Monterrey, como ustedes ya lo tienen ahí, necesitamos soluciones. Lo que estamos ganando actualmente no alcanza para pagar vivienda. O comemos o pagamos un techo.
The wages that we get, like you and Mayor Craig have already talked about, it's just not sufficient. We have to make choices between whether we want a roof over our head or whether we get to eat.
Los propietarios de vivienda no tienen realmente corazón para aumentar las rentas. Muchas familias están siendo desalojadas, viviendo en sus carros, viviendo en garajes, viviendo en la calle, con familias, niños pequeños.
The property managers really don't have a problem with continuing to raise our rent, and we're forced to make difficult choices such as living in cars, having two families in a garage, being put in unsafe situation with our children.
Realmente estamos aquí, nuestro grupo, para pedir la colaboración entre el condado y la ciudad para poner solución, para construir pólizas que establezcan una protección para inquilinos, establezcan protecciones para residentes de aquí de esta ciudad, que no tengamos que ir a movernos a otra ciudad, al sur del condado donde podemos pagar por algo que no podemos pagar.
We're asking that you as county leaders and as city leaders work together to make sure that there are policies that protect renters so that we no longer have to be displaced and move to South County or move out to other cities where we can afford. We should be able to live where we work.
La mano de obra, la mayor parte de las personas son mano de obra campesina, que ganamos dinero del campo, no alcanza para comprar una casa, necesitamos viviendas asequibles a nuestros ingresos.
Much of the labor workforce here works in agriculture, and we need to make sure that we're creating opportunities for accessible housing because the wages simply aren't there.
Realmente me da mucho gusto, igual que nuestro grupo, que ustedes hayan tomado la iniciativa de trabajar en colaboración, porque eso es lo que se necesita.
It makes me so happy and gives me a lot of comfort to see that you both and our leaders here at the city and the county level are taking the initiative to create these kinds of solutions because it's needed.
Sabemos que mañana va a haber una junta en el concilio para un registro de alquiler, va a haber un voto. Nuestro grupo de la escuelita juntamos hasta ahorita 70 comentarios públicos por escrito que los vamos a entregar mañana al concilio pidiéndoles y compartiéndoles cada situación de cada persona.
We know that tomorrow at the Salinas City Council meeting there's going to be an agenda item and a vote on a rental registry for the city of Salinas. We want you all to know that we as a group, La Escuelita, have gathered 70 public comments from residents who are sharing their personal stories and their issues with housing.
Necesitamos sinceramente el concilio y el condado nos apoyen, nos dé protecciones a los inquilinos.
We need the city and the county to make sure that they support us and that they protect renters.
Solo para compartir un poquito, en enero 10, 2023, yo entregué la llave del apartamento porque fui desalojada también. Estaba pagando $1,300 de renta en un apartamento de 2 recámaras. 20 días después, el nuevo dueño, el nuevo propietario, agarró nuevos inquilinos y les empezó a cobrar $2,550 de renta a ellos.
And just to give you my own story and my own perspective, January 10th, I had to turn in the keys to my apartment because whereas before I was being charged $1,300 for a 2-bedroom apartment, the folks that came in after were charged $2,500 for that same apartment.
un incremento de más del 50%.
A huge raise of more than 50% of that price.
Yo me fui a pagar una casa de $3,830.
I ended up having to move to now pay for a house that is $3,300.
Mi ingreso se va 100% ahí.
And the entirety of my wage goes to that payment.
Totalmente frustrante, totalmente desesperante, necesitamos protección.
It's very frustrating and it's very defeating, and it's for that reason that we need protection. Thank you.
Pues, gracias. Gracias por eso.
Thank you so much. We've been a little bit over. I want to say thank you for your comments. Thank you for organizing. Thank you again, Carla, for speaking. Your story is heartbreaking, and it's the story of so many other people, hard-working people in our community. So we're getting a lot done. I'm not going to put that aside, but we have so much more work to do. So please keep showing up. If you want to talk more about the housing needs, we will make sure we get your contact information, Eric, so that we can follow up and maybe sit down and have a special meeting. To our waste management workers, thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, always. And to those community members who got our notice or saw us online, Jared, thanks for coming out. Ramon, thank you for coming out. I hope you were able to share something new. But please don't be a stranger to our office. I'm available. My staff is available. The mayor makes herself so abundantly available. And the needs of our community are great. I don't think there's any way to shirk that reality. The needs of our unhoused residents are significant. The needs of our workforce, it's the challenge that I know I'm facing. It's the needs of our seniors, trying to figure out how to take care of my mom. It's all very complicated, and if the answers were easy, we would have it all figured out. But with that, thank you for coming. I'm going to give Mayor Craig the final comment here, and then we'll close it out.
I just want to say thank you. You know, certainly we continue to work together. As Wendy said, I'm available. I do have Christina here, although, there she is, over there in the back. If you want to leave a question or comment or just contact information with Christina, I will follow up with you. Just want to make that available to everyone, and really appreciate that you have a choice in what you do with your Monday night, and thank you for sharing it with us. Thanks.